Oh,
Okay.
that's working.
I'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.
All right.
Check the meeting.
Yeah.
And we're good.
Okay, we're back. So I guess we had some technical issues here. We're not sure if we were actually streaming, maybe just no video. But we're good. I'll start from the beginning for everybody's benefit. So welcome back to another Roarockit Live. I'm Professor Mars, and that's Jonathan Nuss behind the camera there. Gonna say a little.
Hi, made it work.
I hope it works. Today I want to talk to everybody about veneer. What's usable, what's not, what we sort out, what we send out to customers, what you can build with, what you can't, and just sort of show you guys all the little details that we go over whenever we sort out material for customers. We're good? Everything's going? Perfect, great. You guys get over there? I think we're going, so I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to show you guys all the little bits I've got laid out here. Hopefully you will be able to see and maybe learn a little bit about the material that you get from us and you know, what's usable and what's not. So let's get started. Now I've got right here a stack of perfect, great, consistent material. You can see right here, you know, all these sheets are very parallel, they're consistent with each other. You know, there's very nice flat material, not too much warping. There's a little bit of a natural cut in this stuff. For the most part, it's great. What I've got here, we've got a nice clear piece. There's a little bit of a core here with a split, you know, kind of a knot. But that stuff's really, really good and usable. The glue will fill up any gaps that show up here. What else we got here? We've got nice clear piece. This one has a bit of knotting in the corner, but that's okay. We would send that out because that tends to not be a used portion of a board. We got a nice clear piece. Again, some knot coring on the side. This is a beautiful figured piece right here. I don't know if the camera will pick that up, but there's lots of bird's eye, lots of curl in this sheet. A little bit harder to sand than a sheet without that stuff, because this is sort of an indication of extra mineral content in the material, but looks really good, fantastic to use if you like doing staining work. This one here, we got a little bit of coloration there, right? A little bit of sap lines right here. This stuff is perfectly good to use. The density content of like the colored stuff might change a little bit. For the most part, it's not really noticeable, as the glue and the glue lines will do far more for your board than the material itself. Here we've got a knot, nice hole there, right? That one's about dime size, probably a little closer. I'll put my finger next to it for some scale. This stuff we would send out. This is still good. Your glue, when you laminate this stuff, will fill that up. When it's under a vacuum, it'll fill up that gap and it'll laminate great. The only concern with something like this is you might not want to have it in your board in such a way that when you chop your shape out, it's on the edge. If that happens, it's not a big deal. There's ways to fill that in. You can also simply do things like flipping the veneer in your lamination, because that might be all it takes to get it out of the board line that you're going to cut out. What we got here? We got another piece, a little bit of another knot here, but this one's filled in. There's some gaps around the edges, but that will fill in with glue just the same. And there we go, back to that first sheet. So all this stuff here, really good material. This is probably what it's going to look like when you purchase a set of veneer from us. All of this stuff is great and it's perfect. I've got a couple other things here to show you. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. Some of it approaches bad, but is still usable. And that's kind of the importance in you know, working with raw material, because you know what you are purchasing from us is a raw material. It's a raw good. It's not a product in the classical sense of the term. We sell it as a product. We do our best to quality control all of the stuff that goes out, but at the end of the day, you are still buying raw material, and you know, what you get is what you get. let's go to, oh, what should we do next? Let's do a little bit of warped material. This is my most often asked question. A customer will get a package of veneer in the mail, and they'll take a look. They might not even take it out of the box, and just sort of look at it on the edge, and understandably they'll say, they'll ask me, they'll be like, hey Marcel, this stuff I got, I think it's warped. Is there anything we can do about this? Can we get this replaced? And usually, once we've done the quality control, once we've filtered out the bad stuff, anything that looks like warp, anything that looks like bends, little bubbles, inconsistencies in the flatness of the veneer, for the most part, are all fine. When you apply a water-based wood glue to the veneer, it helps to make it a little more malleable, and finally when you go to laminate the board, it's under such pressure that it's forced flat anyways. And once the glue dries, keeps that. So, it's not a big deal, but there are some things to look out for. So what I got here, this is an especially bad piece right here. You can see right away there's some inconsistencies. For the most part, this board is actually not bad. This sheet of veneer is not bad. It could be usable, if not for this section in the middle right here. So what we've got is some tight curling. Usually this occurs at the mill. This is because of a variety of factors, like maybe water dripped on it and then it was dried rapidly after, causing such tight bends. Perhaps this was on the bottom of a stack and this was just in contact with air. Maybe there was airflow under the skid drying it out rapidly. This kind of thing usually occurs from like extreme environment changes. This is probably, most likely, definitely not going to press flat when you finally use it. This stuff is very, very obvious. We pretty much take it out of all the stacks once we come across it. This is a much better piece. This one still, you can see, has a lot of that bending, that warpy waviness going on, but it's still perfectly good material. Like I said, when you add a water-based glue to this surface, when you laminate your board, looks like we got deliveries. When you laminate your board, the water will make the material more malleable, and then again, when you laminate it, it flattens out flat perfectly. So this stuff, there's some warps, there's some bends. You can see there's kind of a bit of like bubbling in the middle where it's just sort of dried unevenly. Again, you're going to reintroduce moisture content to this. It'll be a perfectly serviceable piece of material. We're going to take a quick 1-minute break while we deal with our UPS guy. I promise you we will be back in a second. Hey guys, we're back. We got deliveries to go out, more of this material, in fact. So this moves on to our next piece here. It's sort of similar to that warp stuff, but this is more like it's warping, or more accurately, it's cupping because of an uneven drying rate. These were stacked on maybe the top or the bottom of the veneer pile, and maybe like our heater was hitting them, and so one side of them dried more rapidly. It would actually be this side that dried more rapidly, and it just cups. What ends up happening is, because this sheet here dries a little faster than this side, the surface area actually shrinks. As the veneer loses water content, it takes up less space. Whereas the bottom, it's either not drying or drying at a slower rate, and so its geometry stays more consistent for a longer period of time, and so it can bend like this to fit this new geometry of the shrunken surface area. This stuff is actually pretty good to use. This is an extreme cup. We would probably sort this out, that way you don't have to deal with this. But we'll probably use this material in the future for our own purposes. And one thing you can do to deal with cup, all of your material will have a slight cup. What that is just the natural curvature of the trunk of the tree. Because this stuff is rotary cut, technically it means that it's just peeled right off the log. And so all of your sheets will have that natural bend. if you want to deal with, if you want to deal with the cup in a intelligent, future-proofing kind of way, you know, when your board dries, the cup direction will actually have a little bit of an effect on it, and you might notice your board warping if, say, you laminated all of your sheets together where the cups match. So what you can do, a little trick, is flip them, oppose the cups. You know, even the cross grain has a bit of a natural cup to it, and so when you laminate your board, you make sure that your cup is opposed to each other. When it does dry out, when there's some natural moisture exchange going on, it will at least, this will help to make it a more even dry, preventing a lot of warpage in the future. Another thing that these are drawn out for is every now and then we get extra thick material. I really can't tell from this shot, but let's see here. Maybe I can give a little comparison. I'm sorry if this actually doesn't really show you much. I'm hoping you can tell, but you know, you can see the item on the left is a little thin compared to the one on the right. You know, we try very hard to pull this stuff out. You know, the entire point is to have 1/16 inch material. You're not pressing with 1/20, you're not pressing with 1/8. It's 1/16. That's the best. What else we got here? Let's go for knots. I covered knots really quickly in that good pile. This is a couple of examples of bad knots, and maybe a good one also in here. So our requirement for stuff that goes out is, you know, if a knot, whether it's the hole or simply the diameter of the knot itself, is larger than 1/4, then we'll hold it back. And so, you know, this stuff, very, very thin, very narrow, right? On a cross-grain piece, no less. So when you laminate this piece, you know, what's going to happen is glue's going to fill this in, and that glue line right there is actually going to be a lot stronger than the maple right next to it, you know, providing that natural material. The glue is simply a stronger material than maple, but, you know, you're not going to make a board entirely out of glue. That's expensive, and it actually kind of makes a crappy ride. So we've got another big one here. You know, this sheet has been pulled out, but we also have a little one next to it. And so you can see these two here. You know, the one on the right, we would send out if that was the only thing on this sheet, but because it's got this one on the left, we've pulled it back. If you do get this stuff in your package where you're not still usable, we just do it as a rule of thumb, sort of for the customer's peace of mind. One more thing here we've got splits next. So this piece here I've got is an egregious split, whereas this one here is not so bad. So splits and runners, they're kind of two different things. You might get runners very much often in your material. It's just the material is cracked, right? There's no gap. It's just a simple split down the length of the grain. Cross grain might have that very often, just because the length of the grain is much shorter, and so it's a little less stable, easier to split. The bamboo that we send out, it's all vertically laminated material cut into sheets, and so in transit, that stuff almost will definitely split a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. Again, just like, you know, those tiny knots or the tiny cracks, when you laminate this, this will fill with glue, and again, will almost become stronger than the natural material it's gluing together. Now, on the other hand, when the material doesn't dry very well, or when there's an extreme drying event, sort of, oh, what's the term they use for that stuff? A traumatic event to the material. If it just dries really, really fast because it was in a humid environment and then you took it to a dry environment, you know, something like this might occur. This is the result of, again, the surface area changing. What happens is, you know, the surface area on both sides of the material dried really, really fast, and so it tried to shrink, but because maybe like down here, it stayed a little more humid. In fact, now that I touch it, this actually does feel a little bit more moist than this stuff up here is very, very dry. So the geometry down here did not change, whereas this, you know, it needed to shrink, had to make itself fit somehow with the rest of the board, and so what it does is it splits, and you can see it's a pretty big gap. Now this stuff, we don't even hesitate with. We pull it all out. You can use it, you can make a board with this, but that's a pretty beefy glue line that you're gonna end up with. And you know, it's not the best, especially if it shows up on a face sheet. Nobody wants that. I got a couple more pieces here about some bad stuff here. This is a really bad split, right? It's very wide, very long, definitely larger than our quarter diameter as a rule. We've got a piece here where there's a big knot, like a core happened right on the edge. This stuff was pulled out because, you know, unless it's in the middle, this is much harder to work with. Chances are that this will end up on the edge line of your board. What I've got here is two things. We've got some lacy stuff here. This is known as heartwood. It's sort of where the wood is a little bit less dense than the proper material. Some people call it rot, some people call it heartwood, others people call it just like lacy green stuff that doesn't really work all that well. This stuff we filter out. It doesn't mean it's not usable, or when it comes to cross grain, it's not too bad. The glue will fill up all the porous areas and the cracks and whatnot, and it actually makes it a little bit more usable, but we understand the concern when it comes to putting this stuff into, you know, something that you're going to thrash around, a professional piece of sports equipment like a skateboard. This one also has what's known as a tear, and there was probably a knot here, and what ended up happening is as this was rotary cut, it probably grabbed a dense bit of that core and just ripped it right out, leaving us with this funky little edge stuff. That we pull out. Not great to work with. And this is just really bad. I mean, we shouldn't even really be getting this stuff. This stuff gets pulled out right away. This is completely unusable. It's a huge gap, huge knot, lots of tearing on this piece, lots of heartwood going on. Like there's even one of those tears I was just showing you. We would never send this out. We probably wouldn't even use this for ourselves. Would make a great live edge piece though for something else, any other kind of woodworking project, but for a skateboard, not ideal. So I think that covers all of the material I've got. I hope I've touched on something that might have concerned everybody here watching today. If there's something I missed, if there's a question you have, you know, let us know. We're going to keep an eye on this all week. But if people have asked questions so far, or if anybody has questions now, we'll do a live question period. But I'm being told that no, there are none yet. So,
well, maybe this is it. Questions, people.
Let's bring them in. If you got questions,
lots of lovely comments. I'm glad people are enjoying it.
Today we're just talking about veneer. So lay it on me.
No. Boxers. No Rob Cydia, no boxers or briefs. Yeah. Well.
Right. Well, after that awkward pause, I think we're gonna call this one. Again, if you have any questions about anything that I might have missed here today, if there's any tips, any tricks that you want to be told about, you know, I've got them all. I've got most. Maybe I've got some. But write to me. You can reach me at marcel@roarockit.com. We're on Facebook. You know, you comment on this thing. Reach Jonathan Nuss and anybody else at Roarockit. We will be back in 2 weeks with another live video. I think Grandmaster Ted Hunter is going to join me with that one. We're going to cover a couple more advanced items.
Man.
Bye. And if you have any more questions, you came late to it, write them down below. We can still answer them for you because we can't always catch the live. So write your questions down below. We'll put them, we'll make sure to answer all questions. Okay?
Marcel loves you.
Bye.